go ahead and get us started. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening for the Adult Jail Juvenile Detention Levy Renewal Forum. I am Kate Lasky, and I'm a volunteer with the Chamber of Commerce on the Government Affairs Committee. This levy covers Measure 17101, again, the renewal for the adult jail and juvenile detention for the election this November 2nd. Joining me this evening is Josh Ballack from the Chamber, who will also be assisting in facilitating our forum of panelists as we provide questions and hear answers to help us better understand the levy itself. This evening, I'll introduce each of you on the panel and ask that you say a little bit about yourself and how you serve the public. And so I'm going to start with Sheriff Dave Daniel.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, Sheriff Dave Daniel, Josephine County Sheriff. Been in law enforcement for about 26 years now. The Josephine County Sheriff for about the last 7. I got into this business because long ago, when I was working for the city police department, I had to issue a citation to an individual that had just kicked in the front door of a residence, was going to burglarize it, and it was actually occupied. That individual was placed in handcuffs shortly after getting there, and I had to write him a ticket. And that's really the crux of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I promised to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And so here we are today, in a little better position than we were back then.
Thank you very much. And District Attorney Josh Eastman.
Hi, thanks, Kate. Josh Eastman, District Attorney. I've been the District Attorney for just short of 2 years and just 4.5 before that as a DDA here. From Rogue River, came back to home, and I share a similar sentiment in everything that I do now. It's home, and one of the legs of the stools that keep it home. So
thank you. And Juvenile Justice Director Jim Goodwin.
Hi, my name's Jim Goodwin. I have been with the Josephine County Juvenile Department for over 22 years now, and I've been the director for almost 10, and have been through, like Sheriff Daniel said, much of the good, much of the bad. We went through a pretty rough stretch there, starting in 2012, going about 2018 or so, where we shuttered most of our services. So have quite a bit of insight to give tonight about where we've been, where we are now, and where we go.
Thank you. And business owner, Club Northwest owner, Scott Draper. Oh, Scott, you're muted.
Thank you, Kate. Scott Draper, and I have been the owner of Club Northwest for 25 years since we opened our doors now, and have seen a lot of change in the area, and had the distinct pleasure of getting to know Sheriff Daniel and some of his team during an effort to pass a public safety levy. Josh, you can probably remember, I think it was maybe 14 or 15, somewhere right in there. It was a failed attempt, and was so glad to eventually see some more funding for Dave, who has done an amazing job since then.
Okay, thank you all. And I'm going to pass it over to Josh Ballack to ask our questions.
One thing I will say is tonight we're going to ask a few questions, about 10 questions. And then if anybody is interested who is watching live would like to ask a question, please do so either on the Facebook forum or through the app that we're currently using called StreamYard. So either one of those will work. And we once we wrap through our kind of prepared questions, we will open up for comment questions after that. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started here. The first question that we would like to ask is, what does the current levy fund? And Sheriff Daniel, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure, you bet. I'll start off by saying it funds the Josephine County Jail and our correctional facility on the sheriff's office side. And I'll turn it over at the when I'm finished to Director Goodwin, as it also funds his department. The levy covers about 76% of our jail budget, so it's not 100% coverage. We receive about 12% from other resources, and I'll get into those a little bit later for this program. And then also contingency or carryover funds covers another 12%. So we operate at FTE or full-time equivalent employees of 49.10, which includes 37 sworn personnel in our correctional facility. Also 10.10 FTEs for support personnel, because there is obviously a lot of that going on in the records division and civil and booking clerks and things like that, our control center. And there's about 50% or I'm sorry, 0.5% of half of an FTE for administrative services. So that's really what it funds. I'd like to go on a little bit in answering maybe just as much what it funds, but what it supports. And I think that's important because the Josephine County Jail, for lack of a better word, is kind of the punishing agent. It's like going into timeout when you're a kid, when you're young. Maybe now if your wife gets a hold of you, but it's really a crux for all law enforcement in Josephine County, not just the sheriff's office, but also for state police and the city of Grants Pass. And prior to the levy passing back in 17, or actually 16, and then going into 17, the city of Grants Pass had $1 million contract. I think the taxpayers were paying out of their, water bills, if I'm not mistaken. And they were able to pay for and provide a service. Well, that did nothing for our county residents that the state police and the sheriff's office were detaining. So the city was able to, with the passage of this last levy, the correctional juvenile justice levy, they were able to stop doing that, and everybody was able to kind of pay their share, or at least most of our citizens were able to pay their share. Things that it supports, and the previous levy really is no different than this one, other than it being a renewal. And I have to emphasize that it is not an increase. It's what our citizens in Josephine County have been paying for the last 5 years. It's the same thing. So it's just a continuation. The promises are the same, with a little bit of variance in there. I'll explain that. But it allows a population of 185 adults in custody, or AICs as we call them. This year was different. COVID affected that. I think that was probably the only promise I ever made that I couldn't keep in law enforcement. So it had to go down a little bit, and it is still a little bit down. But the second promise is that it allows all persons arrested to be transported to the Josephine County Jail in Josephine County. That means a trooper, an officer, a deputy, at their discretion, depending on the circumstance, and if it's good or something they feel they need to do, they can bring any person to the Josephine County Jail. Now, I will tell you, maybe they won't stay long because the numbers are down, but something happens. Something takes place. There's that immediate, oh my gosh, that person did something wrong, is picked up, placed in the handcuffs, and taken to the jail. I can tell you we are the only jail in the state of Oregon that is doing that right now. Everybody else has reduced what if crimes can be brought into their facility. So we kept that promise, and we'll continue to keep that promise. The last promise made, which I think is very important to keep the trust and build upon the trust for the people, is there is an external audit done annually by an outside financial firm that comes in, analyzes our books, and makes sure, and I would say I'm talking the county books, and make sure that all of the money, all the funds that is gained from the previous levy goes to the sheriff's office and the juvenile justice department, and that's where it needs to go, and that's where it has to go, because that's the promise made, and that is the promise that we have to keep and will keep and want to keep. So, Director Goodwin, is there anything that you'd like to add as far as what your levy funds?
Sure. Similar to the sheriff's office, we have a much smaller in scale, but we have a juvenile detention center, which is a secured facility for youth. Number one priority is public safety. As the sheriff said, any youth in Josephine County can, at officer discretion, go to juvenile detention, similar to the sheriff's office. And because juvenile law is so restrictive, you might not be able to lodge that youth overnight or keep them for an extended time, but it's a point of contact with us, with folks that know how to best deal with youth. So starting first with the public safety model, any youth that is a menace in our community, that's a risk in the community, can be housed there pending court. Any youth for accountability purposes, again, similar to the sheriff's office or the adult jail, probation violations for youth who are supervised in the community that aren't meeting supervision standards, it's used for that. And it's also just like I said, that initial point of contact for all kids in the system as they come in contact with law enforcement. So specifically for us, this levy only funds that. There's a lot of different programs in juvenile justice, and we do a very good job, and we work really hard to braid funding together for programs like our community supervision or our prevention program, or our residential treatment center. We have a non-secured residential treatment center. None of these levy dollars can go to that. And as Sheriff Daniel mentioned, the audit is quite stringent, and we have to account for every dime. So it's specific to that program, and specific first and foremost to public safety. The other programs that we do that are nice to have, we have to go out and find our funding elsewhere for that.
Thank you both very much.
Yeah.
Our next question, Dave, or Sheriff Daniel, could you also take a stab at this? And then, of course, if anybody would like to add, please feel free. How long has the levy been at the 93-cent rate that it's currently at?
Since its inception, since it was passed. And correct me if I'm not 100% sure. Was it voted in November of 2017?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
May. It would be May.
May, excuse me. It was May, not November. And then it went into effect, I believe, July. So of 17. So here we are, nearly 5 years later, and it was a 5-year levy. It started at 93 cents a thousand of property value, and this is again a renewal of just that 93, not just because that's obviously to some that might be a little bit, but it's again 93 cents. We're not asking for more. What was provided for the juvenile detention and our abilities to maintain even only at 76% of our budget is enough. And I don't want to ask for more, and we're not.
Thank you so much. Josh?
He's muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Other comments? Okay. Get my little questions here. Okay. So what will happen if this levy renewal does not pass? And District Attorney Eastman, can you maybe give us a start there?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to defer to Sheriff Daniel on the specific logistics. I know that the jail's priority number one's for him, but just from a system overview, if without a jail, so I always describe our system as legs of a stool, and the jail is the leg that the rest of us rely on. The courts rely on it to ensure that people who aren't appearing will show up. The city police rely on it to arrest. OSP relies on it to arrest. The sheriff's office relies on it to arrest, and we rely on it to arrest, deter, punish, those common theories. Something that's not really thought of in jail, but Sheriff Daniel has had since the levies passed that I'm aware of, is that. So also why in jail, we also have treatment programs for those in there, or that our treatment courts use, or it's options on staff. So somebody suffering from mental illness who is in and out of jail or a nuisance in the community, they're not just in jail, there's services while they're in there. So without the levy, we lose beds, we lose that deterrence, we lose the ability to sort of collectively approach these issues in our community. I don't know to what number, but I would say from where we were at when I started here and what people were cited for, it's when I first came here, and it's what we cite for burglary. Well, I mean, because cite, you think speeding or seatbelt, not for burglary, as the sheriff described, or some of the other stuff I've seen. And they would have to triage like they used to, and that leads to failures to appear, further victimization. And it's been a while since we had somebody who had collected 10 or 12 cases before they finally resolved them, which is sort of because they're not out committing more crimes. They're in jail dealing with the ones they've already committed. So.
You're muted, Josh.
I'm going to get a t-shirt that says I'm on mute. Thank you. That is really helpful. Did anybody else have any other follow-ups there?
I can just say it's not my intent, nor do I want to place people in fear of, oh, you have to support this levy. We ask that somebody make an educated choice and listen to kind of what we're saying is maybe there's citizens out there that didn't live here back in 5 years ago. But they're here now, and the system is somewhat stabilized. But think about the possibilities of what a society, a small community could be without a jail, or with a very reduced capacity. It wasn't fun. It wasn't good. It was a miserable time for law enforcement, and I think it was a miserable time for our citizenry. I think they saw the impacts, hence why they supported a jail levy to support the state police and the city police and the sheriff's office and the DA and the juvenile. I mean, it was a heartwarming moment, and a night I won't forget. Maybe even if I don't get the date right, but I remember where I was, what I was doing when the results came in, and that's really what it means. To me, it's an emotional thing, and to the citizens, I think it's a public safety thing more than anything. And try to imagine, and not that I'm trying to place you in fear, because I think an educated decision is the most important part of that. But yeah, I mean, I'm an elected official, so I get to ask for your support, even though I'm just going to try and provide you the facts and let you, the citizenry, make your choice on where Josephine County sits.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I too remember those days. I lived here then, and I do remember an increased number of domestic violence cases that were unresolved. And for me as a woman, that's particularly painful to see in my community. Director Jim Goodwin, do you have anything you'd like to add to implications of not renewing this levy?
Yeah, absolutely. I can just go to what happened in 2012 when all of our secure rural schools funding, the timber dollars, everything basically ended. And we shut down. Our juvenile detention center closed. As a kind of a domino effect, our youth residential treatment center closed also, and we pared back. We lost about 67% of our total staff for our department wide, and that was just basically because we had been propped up for all of those years with either the federal secure rural schools funds or before that timber receipts. And so what we did in 2012 is we rented 3 beds from neighboring counties. First, we rented from Jackson County, and then we moved up to Douglas County for the the last 3 years. And similar to what the sheriff said, we were in a perpetual state of what's the worst of the worst crime being committed that can be lodged and triaged in and out of our 3 beds that we rented in Douglas County. And so that was there was no place for youth to go when officers did. One of the services we provide is, even if it's a lower level crime, the youth might not have anywhere to go. And when we're open, they can come to us and we can provide, whatever they need. And rather than sitting in the back of a police unit or whatever for the night, or, however that works. But so that was the impact for us. We're a general fund department similar to the sheriff's office. And we're a small operation, so we have to staff it at a minimum staffing level, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we can't go from a 14-bed detention center to, say, a 7 and just reduce staff, because our tipping point for being open at all means that we need a certain level of funding. So that was the impact for us in the community. It was a devastating time, I can tell you that. I was the director through that time. And was managed the facility before that. So it was, I could tell stories all night about the effects of that. But, as the sheriff said, when this passed, we are back with full services. We now have the full continuum of services for youth, whether they need secured detention, non-secured residential, home detention in the community, and so on and so forth. So that was the impact for us last time, and that's what I know the sheriff would have to reduce beds drastically, and we would close.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and move us a little bit ahead to our 5th question tonight. Has the current levy helped the criminal justice system since it has been in place? And I would ask that District Attorney Josh Eastman kind of address this question for us.
So that's the wholeheartedly, absolute, and emphatic, absolutely. Without the jail, of course, what we think of, it keeps people who've committed crimes off the streets. It's punishment, it's deterrence. But as I sort of alluded to, it's also a tool that is completely necessary for somebody who is struggling with opiate addiction, and in our treatment court, they use the jail while they're in there till a residential bed opens up. Sheriff Daniel has instituted treatment in there, so it's not what they call dead time. They're actually getting treatment while in jail, so they kind of have a head start when they go to residential. Mental health court uses it for jail because there's an options team that the sheriff has, I think either in-house or they basically have keys to come and go as I'm not sure which way, but so we can address people suffering with mental health issues almost immediately. These are things that without the jail and are often overlooked in the criminal justice system, because when we think of it, we think of punishment, the deterrence, that part. But there's also all these other things that a place that are holding them almost for their own safety with charges pending, so we can holistically approach that. Just from, I don't know the exact numbers on FTA, failures to appear in court, but I know that when either you are released right away and you don't show up and you get an FTA, the next time the judge isn't as likely to let you out on your what's called OR, or own recognizance. And also there is repeat offenders locally who repeatedly fail to appear. And since we've had beds for those low-level offenses and haven't had to triage them out, they're in until their case is dealt with, and then they don't fail to appear. Like I mentioned before, they don't pick up as many cases before they resolve them. Hopefully we can address if there's anything else going on while they're incarcerated. Basically, yeah, it's helped immensely. I can't think of one thing. I mean, it's a stool and it's all very important, but I can't think of one thing, both juvenile, because I totally forgot that all of the same applies there now. That we used to do Roseburg, and it was logistically a nightmare compared to where we're at now and helping the children. But the stool, and we're all important, but without the detention or somewhere to put them, I mean, that's the most integral part of the whole system. So, it's
not just locking them up in a cell 24 hours a day. Director Goodwin and our office, we try to help these people. We try to get them on the right path as fast as possible. Sometimes they need to be incarcerated for that help to begin, because they're unable to do it outside.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to the next question here. So will a fully operating jail and juvenile justice system have an impact on your business? And this question is for Mr. Draper.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, absolutely. We I think, are in a unique position at Club Northwest for data collection on what's going on in the community. When a member leaves, and attrition is part of our industry, when a member leaves Club Northwest, we ask if we can get the why. And during that time that we did not have adequate funding for our system, there were months where 20% of the people leaving our club were moving because, specifically, as they said, a lack of support for criminal justice in the area. And it's important to know these aren't just county residents, these are city residents as well. And in a bit, I want to address that. There's a direct connection, and it would be silly to think otherwise, that since we're in the city, we're protected, although it's a great city police system. Yet when there's leaks in the county, we feel them in the city. And so, those kind of numbers, and it's why I got involved in supporting our public safety levies, is exactly that. It was the direct effect on our business, and how we have this unique way of seeing how that's affecting our community as a whole. And I'd like to add that the people that were leaving at that time were the people you want in this community. They were the ones that were shopping. They were the ones that were supporting in all kinds of ways. And since the passing of the levy, that has changed completely. I have not heard that in a review of a member cancellation for, since 17.
Yeah. And I'll just say one of the other things that we've discussed as a chamber is also the ability to recruit and retain really good quality people for our community, whether it be doctors or lawyers or people who have a lot of mobility, teachers that can go anywhere in the community. We were hearing some people saying, no, I won't come there because of concerns around safety. We haven't heard that at all since 18, which is when this really went into effect. So we've seen it on that side too.
Any other comments? All right. This next question is for Sheriff Daniel. To start, with increased patrol and a marijuana special force in place, does the levy renewal adequately fund adult jail and juvenile resources?
Well, basically, no. But yes, I mean, we have, like I said at the beginning, 76% is what the levy covers. 12% comes from resources such as different programs, like community corrections beds, U.S. Marshals beds, felony DUI through the Department of Correction payments. So that's the other 12%. And then the contingency funds that carry over, because there's quite a bit of turnover in employment in our facility. So just because of the nature of the beast, it's just kind of what it is across the board in corrections. So it doesn't fund it entirely, but it funds it enough for us to be successful. And that's the most important statement I can say. We're able to be successful because of the support that we receive, and we really nailed that down. So we have to do some solid budgeting, some solid spending on what we're spending on, what we're doing, and just be responsible. That's why the rate is down at 93 cents per thousand. And again, the renewed rate is because we're able to manufacture success.
Thank you. Over to you, Josh.
All right. So we're going to do another business question here. So as a business owner, have you seen any changes in the criminal justice system, sheriff services in the last few years or since the levy passed in 2017? And we'll go to Scott.
Yeah, Josh, it has been beyond significant. I mean, to give you an idea, there were times without the levy where we would see on a weekly basis, we would have calls to police, or we use concierge services as well. And I mean, literally on a weekly basis, we would have problems. And the information we were getting back was a lot of these people were coming from the county. And again, we're located in the city limits. And since it went into effect in 18, not just the hope of it once it was voted in, yet once it went into effect in 18 and beyond, we just don't have that. I mean, we rarely have a call to 911 unless it's a medical emergency. Very rare. So, and again, I wanted to make that point is, you know, we're not in this bubble in the city limits. We have to understand that we are a community, and you know, really as a community, by definition, it's a community effort. We can put a few cents in and make this all work, or we can take up the job that Dave's taken on himself. And I know that's not for me. I've seen enough of it to know that Dave and his team are the people we want in that position. I mean, you know, Dave is somebody that is, he brings the exact right integrity to this position. And I think in this position, you need somebody that's gonna lead, number one, that's gonna lead by example. And Dave does that. He's done that since the day he took the position. And you also need somebody with business savvy. And I've seen Dave, I've seen how he's used our funds. I've seen him bring volunteers on that have done incredible work. I've seen him do the things that make the whole system work. And, you know, it's for me as a business owner here and a third generation resident, it's some of the best money spent, period.
Thank you. You bring up such great points, Scott. Thank you so much. Particularly the point of how the city and the county are connected. And District Attorney Eastman, before we started the forum this evening, made a comment, and I'd like to ask you to expand on it about how does the county sheriff's funding really impact our city police and our city law enforcement, and of course our courts. Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute.
I sort of alluded to it, but essentially, if without the jail, it doesn't matter how many police in the city there are, because if there's nowhere to detain them while they'll address their cases or address whatever issue has led to the police contact, or just to lock them up because they keep burglarizing stuff. Without a jail, that doesn't matter how many, I mean, the number of police. The police are the first line. The jail is the beginning of the like the court process, arraignment, etc. So without that, that process is either abandoned or it's so delayed that we can't keep up. So, and that affects the city just as much as the county without the jail beds. And the courts, their big thing is failures to appear in resolving the docket quickly, and COVID has sort of damaged that compared to what Josephine County typically averages higher than normal resolution. And without a jail and the number of FTAs we would have, or without adequate for the population committing crimes, FTAs, and the length of the case's docket life would go up substantially. And so we everybody in the system needs that jail.
And I will add just real quick, Kate and Josh, that the relationships between our city and our county and our state law enforcement and the DA's office and juvenile is absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. They are. I think it's probably better than it's ever been, and truly, we are one team along with the citizens. We'll obviously all do the heavy lifting. When we want our citizens to be the eyes and ears, but I don't think it's ever been. I don't think it's ever been better. I routinely send out emails and make phone calls and stop in and visit with our stakeholders and our other community leaders, just to make sure those relationships stay in place and we're communicating and working to better the best we can. The prime example was we had to really drop the rate because we had a couple different outbreaks in the jail. I made personal phone calls to our lieutenants in the state police and our chief Hensman with the city to say, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, and it's going to be a short term, stay with me on this and we're going to be fine. And it has worked out every time. So I'm really just a shout out to our law enforcement partners, from the DA's office to juvenile, OSP. It's in the city of Grants Pass. It's been great. Thanks for giving me a moment, Kate.
Of course. And it's a great lead into our last question. And I'll just remind all of our participants this evening that you can make comments in the chat. And I am receiving comments on my personal text, which I'll share later. But our last question, it's a great lead in. Sheriff Daniel, what are some of the goals the Sheriff's Office has for the next 3 years?
Oh, grand goals. I mean, you got to set the bar high, right? I still want 24/7 patrols. We don't have them. We're at about 20 hours a day. I want to increase our major crimes division. We currently we're able to get 2 major crimes detectives now. That hasn't happened in, I don't know how many years, but that's just as a result of being able to hire and backfill patrol, which has been a real time consuming process. I want to add a school resource officer. That's going to happen as soon as we can get another couple other people trained up and running. We're going to have 2 in field training and evaluation program. And lastly, we really need to build a more modern evidence facility for our county. And I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I have great concerns currently. So that's just a few, Kate. There's more, but maybe those are the big ones.
Those are great. Thank you. Josh?
Oh, I was just going to say, Director Goodwin, do you guys have any kind of next 3 years kind of looking out also?
Yeah, real quickly, we've spent the last 5 years, because we've had detention funded, and that has taken a lot of, that comes first, right? So when we were contracting in other counties, that's where the money went, and you laid off staff in order to make that happen. We have seriously, and my colleagues around the state would agree with me, one of the best programs in the state of Oregon. We now have folks, prevention folks in every high school and every middle school in the county that are doing prevention work. They're working with really high risk kids that we're probably going to see in the juvenile department someday. And we're working with the folks at the schools, Sheriff Daniel's school resource officer, our prevention folks for those super high risk kids to keep them out of the system. So it really is to try to work yourself out of a job situation. We've been building that for the last 5 years, and that's because we were able to prop up detention, because that's our first priority with public safety. And as a result of that, we remain among the top 3 to 5. In fact, for 2 years, we were the #1 best county in the state for juvenile recidivism. That was between I think 2019, 2020. And it's because of the good work that we're able to do. So our goals are really just around continuing to reinforce those programs and build them, bigger and better as we go. But we have to take care of the basics first. And that's what this is all about here with how we fund our detention facility.
Thank you. Now, we do have some questions I have on text. Josh, do you want to take the ones in the chat? Are you able to see them?
I can see the ones in the chat. Yes. So sure, we'll do the first one here. This is from Christine. And it said, our community is commonly referred to as a catch and release county. Would increasing funding help with longer incarceration times? I guess we'll leave that to Sheriff Daniel.
Yeah, if you increase funding, it certainly could. Christine, you have to understand that there are over 5,000 people brought into the Josephine County Jail annually. That's a very round figure, but it's upwards of higher than that. And so when you have that, and then you have a 185 bed jail, logistically speaking, you can't hang on to everybody. It's impossible. So we try to triage. We take the ones that are most dangerous, and we hang on to them for public safety purposes. Some of the minor offenses may stay for like hours. They may stay for just a few days. And that's unfortunate, but that's really a problem that is not just with Josephine County. That's really our criminal justice system at large, across our state. So I'm not making an excuse. I'm just trying to tell you how that operates.
Yeah, related. So catch and release, those are conflating two things, because incarceration times are sentences that are given out by court, and there's fall on a grid, and the legislature decides what those are. And the courts often release people on low-level offenses, regardless of what the jail wants to do as well. So there's sort of a two-prong here. There's a triage out of necessity, and then there's the second prong with the courts deciding whether somebody needs to be held or whether their crime deserves any further time, sort of thing. So.
And thanks, Josh. That's DA Eastman. That's very true. We do get a lot of court releases. Actually, a lot of court releases. In the jail, so it's not all totally on the sheriff's office. I maybe pass the buck a little bit.
Kate, did you want to do one of your text messages?
Yes, these are wonderful questions. So I'll start with, this is really opened up to everyone, but probably focused more on the jail aspect. Explain how patrols are paid for and how the jail levy has freed up money to support an increase in patrol.
Sure, it's pretty simple. Prior to the levy, over 5 years ago, we had to use general fund monies that could have been used for patrol services, but it all got swallowed up as a foundation for the jail. When the levy was passed, then obviously that gave us a foundation at 76% of the jail, and we had to come up with the other 12 out of contingency. But as a direct result, we were able to take some of those contingency or carryover funds and move them. And I take that back, not contingency or carryover, but general funds that were going to the jail. Now we were able to improve other programs, just exactly what Director Goodwin said in his one of his responses. So that's how we were able to support our patrol divisions. And I'll tell you, to be blunt, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble with our patrol division because we have used some of the contingency funds and we've used them up. So we're facing a little bit of a short haul or long haul in that direction. But I felt it very important to show our citizenry over the last 5 years what we can do if we get support and where we can be, to be transparent as I can and to build the trust. So the levy really helped us do that. And I have every intention on trying to take another step down the road, a sustainable step to try and improve our services even more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jim, did you want to comment on that? Because I know this is primarily a juvenile justice levy. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, just to reiterate some of the things I said before, this is, and Sheriff Daniel said it, your money goes to secure detention or jail first, because if you have a serious person-to-person crime out there, and this person, juvenile or adult, their likely path is to go from jail or detention to a youth correctional facility or to prison, you cannot have that individual, or you really shouldn't, in a civilized society, out on the street waiting until they get sentenced. And that's the whole crux of it right there. You fund that first, and then you're able to do the preventative things. You're able to provide more services. And just really quickly on the city versus county, I would imagine it's the same with adults, but when you talk about the service for both areas, we commonly get youth that come to us that have touched the sheriff's office, Oregon State Police, and city PD. They go into the county, they go into the city. Folks are in the county at a county park when their car gets broken into, and they live in the city. So it's so interconnected that it touches everybody.
Thank you. All right, here's a lengthier, first a comment, then a question. This person says, I love the focus on needs for jail and courts and the three-legged stool. Are we getting more support from state and hemp marijuana with the passage of legislation in Salem?
Yes, and that's a separate. It's really a separate topic than what we're talking about. I'll make it very short. We work very closely with our JMET team. Works very closely with Oregon State Police and their Southern Regional Drug Team, yeah, it has helped. And I believe you're talking about House Bill 3000. It helped with the communication. We've had OLCC enhancement, Oregon Health Authority enhancement, and that's only growing stronger. We have I put in a request to the Criminal Justice Commission to double our budget, to double our grant request through the Criminal Justice Commission, which I should find out probably next week what we're going to get, and I do believe it's going to almost double.
Thank you. And Josh, did you want to add anything about just the renewal aspect? I see a comment from the chamber, and I know that you had been speaking about this in the past.
Yeah, I just, I guess I'm going to just ask the sheriff one more time, just to really kind of hammer this home. So this is not increasing local taxes, correct? This is renewal of a current rate. Is that right?
Absolutely correct. Unless, you're obviously going to have the value of your home might go up a little bit. So it could increase just a little bit, but it's not a bigger percentage of what people are paying. It's 93 cents per thousand for the Josephine County Jail, the Sheriff's Office Jail, and Juvenile Detention Center.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Kate, did you have any more text message questions?
I was just checking, and no, I have no more.
Well, then we'll do a funny question here. So this is from Pat. He knows who he is. So apparently he had to push a sheriff's car up 7th Street. Will that have to happen if we pass the levy?
Further securing our safety.
like I said, that's not funny, but no, I'm like I said, I'm going to look at something down the road. We need this. We need this desperately. And when I say we, I'm talking to all of us need this from the business owners. And thank you very much, Mr. Draper, for showing up to our kids in the schools. I feel like we missed a generation, almost the last, before this, we were able to pass that levy initially. So no, I hope you don't have to push a car up 7th Street again.
Well, actually, we did get one last one here, and you guys might not know this, but it's from Valerie, and it's how does our current tax levy rate compare with other counties across the state?
Well, I think I can answer that. I think unless somebody else can. Scott, maybe you could chime in on that one. If you know?
I don't. I know in the past, as I've been following it, we were perennially one of the lowest in the state.
Yes. Yeah. Second, my understanding is right now we're second lowest for just general fund. I don't know the calculation if you add the 93 cents per thousand to that, technically where we would go. But at the same time, I'm looking at Jackson County. they're upwards of 240. Instead, we're not anywhere near that. So in Deschutes County, oh my goodness, that's it's yeah, high, but we're very, very low, Valerie.
I can say that traditionally Josephine County had been the second lowest in the state by far, with only Curry County being the lower by a penny. I believe now Josephine County is somewhere between 7th and 9th lowest in the state.
That's about right.
And for the excellent services that we receive from all of you, we could consider that quite a bargain at the renewal rate.
Yep.
That you're asking for. So,
can I comment on that real quick, Kate?
Of course, yes.
Just back to the 93 cents, and when these conversations popped up, unlike DA Eastman and the sheriff, I'm not elected, so I won't directly ask for support. Like I said, I can give the historical perspective, but no one in the system batted an eye when these conversations came up about the rate. We all thought and agreed immediately that not increasing was the right thing to do, and that we would go out and we would find, funding to the best of our ability to fill in gaps here and there and save and do whatever we can. And I think we've done a really good job as a system with that. And just looking forward with especially these two programs specifically, I know the sheriff and I are both very confident that we can continue with what the levy really does mandate: the level of service, number of juvenile beds, number of adult beds, jail and juvenile detention. And we're very confident. I don't want to speak too much for the sheriff, but I can say that our department, we are extremely confident that we can maintain that service with the current rate.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I think we're getting close to the end of the hour here. So we'll just kind of open this up to maybe closing comments, and it could be just whatever you want to say. So, Mr. Draper, if it's okay, put you on the spot and maybe have you go first. If that sounds good.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I just want to say I'm proud of what we've done as a community over the last 3-4 years, and you have stretched every dollar, Dave, Jim, and made it count. I think the test for me as a citizen and as a business owner is I don't even think about it anymore. It's not something that I have to think about. You're taking care of it, and bravo for the citizens for seeing that ahead of time and voting with a few dollars, and well done. Let's keep it up.
And Director Goodwin.
Yeah, real quickly, I think, the work that we do at Juvenile is very quiet. It's not as high profile as the adult system, be it the jail, sheriff's office, DA, that kind of thing. But it's a program in Josephine County that has gone through about the worst of the worst that you can go through. And we have a program now that the folks here can be really proud of. We do some really good work with youth and families. And I just can't say enough that the hinge, the pin that you build all of that off of is your juvenile detention and how that all plays together. So I feel we've been extremely responsible with the funds that the folks, after many, many attempts, finally said, yes, let's give this a shot. And we went to work. We rolled our sleeves up, and I think we've built on both sides, juvenile and adult side, programs that the citizens of the county can be proud of.
Thank you, District Attorney Eastman.
So for me, my role in my 3-year plan is very contingent on the sheriff's office and our other law enforcement partners continuing on the path they're on. So my closing comments would be limited to where the sheriff's office is at now compared to when I started, and it's like, oh man, this is how it should always be. I mean, there's deputies patrolling at night. There's a jail where they can go to jail. There's a marijuana enforcement team. There's major crimes detectives. I'm actually at a training where they're all at currently. And this levy of the few dollars, as Mr. Draper describes it, allows Sheriff Daniel to focus all of that on the other part. So not only is that most important leg of the stool, I mean, I take it for granted now compared to where we were before, as far as they're going to hold them, or if I do a do not release, that'll mean something in court. And then there's also just, we'll just keep moving forward, and to do so at a renewal rate instead of an increases. I think it's important, and it shows that how much they do with so little, or not so little, but I mean efficiently. I guess that's the right way to say it.
And we'll finish up with Sheriff Daniel.
You know, I'll steal Mr. Draper's business line. Life is good in Josephine County. It's not where we need it to be. It's not really where I want it to be, but this is the right path, and we are in this together. We came together 5 years ago. I'm asking to come together again so we can continue finding solutions, solving problems, and helping each other succeed in Josephine County. And we can. And I don't have to lead, but I will push like crazy. Thank you. And lastly, Chamber of Commerce, Grants Pass Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much for putting this on and giving us the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for the work you do to keep our businesses and our community safe and secure in Josephine County. And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight and educated yourselves on these important measures and points. The ballots will be mailed out on October 13th, and this recording will be available on the Chamber's Facebook page, its YouTube channel, and the website at grantspasschamber.org. I really encourage everyone to share this with your friends, family, neighbors, and help us spread the word and educate everyone about public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Proud to be part of this community. Thank you, you guys. Thank you.